Hey, it's Off Track Rest, and this is day 18 of Fire Emblem February. I'm finally excited to get this video out for you guys. This is part 2 to my Fire Emblem 7 video series, and in this video I'm going to do a support overview of the rest of the cast. And check out the first one if you haven't seen it yet. As a Knight of Kaelin, Shane has a place he belongs in camaraderie with Kent, which allows him to be able to openly express his emotions. Sometimes this passion is misplaced and he can be flirty, making the women in his army uncomfortable. His love for women and passion can also cause him to be reckless. His loyalty to Lyn and sense of belonging can also cause him grief, when he can't bring himself to leave the Knights for Priscilla and their support. Kent is a more complicated case than when it comes to Shane. His duty as Knight and Commander of Kaelin gives him a place of belonging, but it also stops him from being mostly honest in how he feels for Lyn, unless the play gets to A support, where he confesses his feelings to her. Though he deals with the conflict of duty and love, for him he resolves his duty and camaraderie is his way of expressing his love, as seen in his rawest A support. Florina is a character that is very in tune with her emotions, which allows her to draw connections with many different people. She also starts the main story already with a place to belong in the Lindis League, where she's been trying her best to express herself. Though she has another family and her sisters, and her way of showing them love, particularly to Fiora, is by being independent. Her ability to make connections shows up in her support with Nino, where she gets to be the biggest sister Nino can rely on, to help her deal with the pain of becoming enemies with her brothers. Prior to joining the Lindis League in Kaelin, Will had left behind his family with Dan, now known as Dart, but the failure to make money has left him too prideful and ashamed to return home to them. Despite that, as a Knight of Kaelin, he has a cheerful demeanor, which makes someone like Raph laugh. In spite of his years of traveling alone, when Will finds a place to belong, he can be very uplifting as someone who is also in solitude for a long time. His Rebecca support explores the consequences of him leaving people behind, where we see how hurt she is by the loss of Will and Dart. With Will, we see the regret of leaving one's family. When we meet Dorcas, he's an enemy unit who's doing a job for bandits to make money for his injured wife. Dorcas comes to fight with Lyn and Eliwood to raise money to take care of his wife. As we see in his guide support, when the topic of the meaning of life shows up, Dorcas doesn't even ponder the top. His life is for his wife. His devotion is something Oswin as a knight can recognize, and others deeply empathize with. Dorcas already has a family he loved, and a place where he belongs, which is likely why he doesn't share an ending with any character. As one of Hector's vassals, Sarah has a huge ego and can ignore others with her delusions of grandeur. Underneath all that is a deeply emotional girl. In her and Hector's support, we come to realize she was just a lonely orphan girl who created fantasies of herself being special, which in her mind means being the daughter of nobles, and likely hoped and prayed her imaginary parents would one day take her home. Her emotional side also comes out when she cries for Lucius, empathizing with his childhood, where he also grew up as an orphan. Even though she can be very annoying, she's very outward of her emotions, and that's likely thanks to the family she has in Ostia. Hector admits as much, making her in a way a younger sister to the Ostia crew. Urk was taken in by Pent and Louise, and he's extremely indebted to the both of them. They are his family and they treat him as son. What's really telling in how he feels though, is when he says the love he receives from Pent and Louise paralyzes him, so he overworks himself to the point of collapse when it comes to studying magic. Urk's support with Louise has her doting on him, as if he were her own son, and Urk struggles to receive that love because he's so grateful to the two of them. Even though Urk seems to bury his emotions in his book, it comes from the dedication to the family that means so much to him. By attempting to become the student he believes Pent needs, Urk is overcompensating, which either creates a distance between his relationship, in Louise's case, or gets him reprimanded, in Pent's case. Raph is a Decaying Bowman who's been alone almost all of his life. He's probably the character that has the least connections in the cast and shows the least emotions, but support she does form allow us to see that. With Will, he is grateful for the Archer's optimism, allowing him to learn how to laugh, and his Lyn and Guy support shows he'll always make a connection to the people of Sakei, even though he's distant from the tribe he was born with. When we encounter him in our first meeting in Lyn mode, and he saves Lynn and leaves Marcus Aerith in services. His connections inform us about the pride of his heritage he has underneath all that isolation. That pride eventually leads him to return home and have his daughter Sue, whether it's with Lynn or an unnamed NPC. Layla was the love of Matthew's life, and her death is really when Fire Emblem 7 gets to be dark. As another one of Hector's vassals, though Matthew can be very shady, he's ultimately well-meaning, and losing Layla, who he wanted to settle down with, Matthew hardened himself to complete the mission Hector asked of him. In his support with Jafar, we see just how deeply the impact of her death had on Matthew, as he bows to kill Jafar, threatening Nino before letting him go. Hearing Layla's voice, and not wanting to do something that wouldn't make her happy. Though Matthew has a lot of grief from Layla's death, his connections and duty to Hector and the TheOfftrackcrew help him deal with that loss. Lucius is probably one of the most important characters in terms of understanding the themes of emotions in Fire Emblem 7, so we'll be returning to him later. But one thing to note about him is that Lucius is quite literally an empath, as he suffers from an illness that comes from sensing and relieving the pain of others. Aside from that, he is a sensitive, kind person, as seen when he comforts a crying Sarah over the shared hardship and is trying to stop Raven from pursuing revenge. In spite of the grief he experienced in losing his parents as a child and the fall of House Cornwell, he's still a person that has nothing but kindness and love towards others. Before the final chapters, Nilus is deeply affected by the death of his sister, shutting down, but it's through Fargus' encouragement that he's able to muster the strength to aid the main characters in their final battle, dealing with both love and grief, and getting to be alongside of them one last time before going away. While Marcus' support doesn't carry themes of grief and the importance of expressing one's emotions, he's very much the center of the found family of the Foray Knights, holding himself and others with pride and constantly looking out for Eliwood and his fellow knights. In that sense, Marcus is a character that gives all the knights a place to belong, showing love for them in Eliwood. Lone is a bit of a goofball and a foodie, but he has an earnest admiration to join the Knights of Foray, stemming from being saved by Lord Elbert as a child. His youthful optimism has an effect on Harkin, who he looks up to, which saves Harkin from the grief of failing to protect Lord Elbert. Lone ultimately wants to make his found family and the Knights proud. Not only is there a sense of camaraderie between the Knights, but Lone being able to express his admiration saves someone who could have been a lost soul. Rebecca is an interesting case because of relationships with Ruler Dart. In those supports, as mentioned earlier, we see the impact of their absence on her, missing both of them dearly. With Raven, we get to see just how much she misses Dart, and a new side of Raven, who wants to return to his sister but is dealing with his own issues. When she does support Dart, she immediately recognizes him as Dan, but he doesn't remember his past. It does become clear he is Dan, so she chooses to love him and accept him as Dart, for who he is now. Bartre really has a love of fighting. He's also really dumb. If he didn't have his intense love and passion for fighting and strength, he probably wouldn't meet his future wife Carla, and they wouldn't have their daughter Fear. You can say his love for fighting led him to the love of his wife. Osric and Hector's relationship is very important. At first, Osric is serving Hector out of a sense of duty, ordered by Uther to follow Hector in his antiques. Although he does have a growing sense of fondness for him, seeing Hector march at the beat of his own drum. Though Osric dedicates his knight's vow to Hector, withholding the fact that Uther is dying is a secret he withheld that caused Hector a lot of grief and puts a wedge in their relationship. But Osric still remains dedicated to him anyways. Guy is extremely outward with emotions, as he has an earnest go-getter personality, which allows him to make connections with people from all walks of life, from Matthew to nobility and fellow wandering warriors in Raph and Corel. This comes to pass in his support with Raph, where Guy is constantly trying to prove his worth and gone along, and though Raph is used to isolation, they can still form a connection through the Shikei lineage. It's the same as his Corel support, where they form a connection as swordsmen, with Corel not wanting Guy to be stronger, so he doesn't feel compelled to fight him. Showing Guy's determined personality can have an effect on even the most emotionally distant people. Priscilla is a very gentle, lonely woman that gets easily attached to others. Even prior to the events of Fire Emblem 7, she'd been alone in her adopted family in Urethra. missing her biological parents and her brother Raven. In Osrin's support, she finds out her parents committed suicide after the fall of their house for debts they failed to pay. She is also able to fall in love with many different suitors, being Heath, Sane, Guy, and Urk. It's worth pointing out that Heath and Sane's supports ends with them loving each other, but not being able to be with either of them because of the difference in their positions, though she can be together with Urk. Someone pointed out to me in my Tragic Endings video that if she and Guy get an A support, according to the Japanese version, they actually elope together. Between all of the tragic love she can experience though, Priscilla is very representative of a character that deals with love and grief. Raven's desire for revenge comes from the grief of losing his parents and his house. Lucius tries desperately to stop him from pursuing revenge, that'll just lead to more hurt, where Raven stubbornly can't bring himself to stop. Raven may seem cold because of this, but he does sincerely care for Lucius and Priscilla and doesn't want to lose the only family he has left in them. He even offers kindness to a crying Rebecca, both who have a strange relationship with their siblings. His support with Priscilla and Lucius has him give up his revenge, and in his Lucius ending, the pain of his loss is eased through their relationship. Knauth's love for magic helps him form a connection with Nino and Pent. Nino, who happens to be a distant relative of his. Both he and Bartre, who are passionate about their fields about as much as each other, share a mutual understanding despite their differences. Dart's past life as Dan had him lose his former family as he's suffering from amnesia, in which case he may as well be a different person, as he sees himself as Dart and is extremely loyal to his new family he has in the Fargus Pirates, who saved him when he was bleeding out on the streets when no one else would. He still does have connection to his past though, in Will and Rebecca, who knew him as Dan. Both have issues dealing with the loss, but they eventually come to accept him as Dart, whereas Dart is completely content with who he is because he has a place where he belongs, so his past life isn't even a question to him. Fiora suffers from a lot of grief, as she enters your party the lone survivor of her squad, with her comrades all dying, something she is deeply, obviously saddened by. As the oldest sister of 3, she has a deep responsibility to both of her younger sisters, but she also tends to forget they have their own agency. Florina expresses that she loves her, but she also wants to be independent, and doesn't want Fiora R's looking out for her. As for her middle sister, part of the reason Fairness R is money hungry is because she wants to play a loan Fiora had gotten in breaking her contract to save her. Her love for her sisters and her sense of responsibility can cause her to be very harsh on herself when she doesn't meet up to her own expectations. In her support with Eliwood, he encourages her to seek her own happiness, which is something she can pursue in different endings. Legault, whose epithet was the Hurricane, was a former member of the Black Fang. He was the cleaner of the organization, killing members who were traitors. He had a great love for the former Black Fang members, with Sonya Nurgle's arrival leading him to hate the changes that were suddenly being made in his organization. This came to a headway when he was ordered to kill his wounded friend and innocent people, leading him to become a deserter. His struggle is dealing with the grief of having to leave his former family in the Black Fang and the love he had for them. Isidore has always worked hard to be a knight. She's engaged to Harkin prior to him leaving with Elbert. With him gone for several months, she missed him severely and struggles to forgive him and accept him back if they do reunite. Though she suffers from grief from her lost loved one, she does have a place she belongs with the fellow knights to ease that pain. Heath is an honorable Raven Rider from Bern. He's the lone survivor after he and his squad were labeled as deserters for trying to save innocent people from Bern's military, who were killing them under the guise of stopping a rebellion, only to shift the blame on Heath's squad. This left him with no love for his country and several dead friends. When meeting with Veda, his commander, it's clear how much reverence he has for her. He makes the decision to follow her back to Bern, knowing it may lead to his death, deciding right then that he's prepared to die beside her. He's someone who has love for his comrades and suffers from the betrayal of his country. Coming from the Nevada village, Hawkeye is someone who's completely at peace with himself, already having a family, a daughter in England, and knowing his place in the world. Living in a utopia where dragons and humans are at peace with each other. For him, his journey is about helping his comrades. It's worth noting, everything Hawkeye has is everything Nurgle lost due to him losing himself in his pursuit of power. Gaitz is a very tragic man. Joining in on Linus's map of Four-Fang Offense, he wanders seeking a purpose in life after seeing his father abuse his employees on a merchant ship, working even children to death. He lost all the love he had for his father and began his life wandering, carrying grief with him wherever he goes. He's a character that we never see find a place where he belongs, or the meaning of life that he's seeking, though he can be empathetic to Dorcas, whose reason for living is his wife. So as long as you keep your love to your lord in your heart, your loyalty never wavers, wouldn't you agree? Wallace as a knight does several acts of love for Lynn and her parents. When he was ordered to bring them in for eloping, after he caught up to them and saw how much they loved for each other, he let them go. When coming face to face with their child, Lynn, while she's trying to claim her place as Lady of Kaelin, he immediately fights alongside her, serving the child of the lady he served. Lastly, to save Lynn from being consumed by rage and revenge at the death of her tribe and her parents, he kills the bandit tribe that killed them, not even for the sake of his own revenge, but so she wouldn't have to do it herself and could be happy and move on. His duty and pride as a knight is his own way of showing his love. Pet and Louise are generally good people. They're a happily married couple and treat everyone around them with kindness, without care for nobility, even treating Urk as if he were their own son. No grief here, they're literally a family that just genuinely loves those around them. Corel is quite literally built different and borderline edgy. As the sword demon, he made a reputation in killing powerful warriors and is constantly seeking stronger opponents to fight. He massacred his family so he could keep their sword technique that only one person could yield. As blood-hungry as he seems though, there are support conversations where we see the toll his killing takes on him. With Lucius, who he's initially aggressive with, he eventually expresses the ease he feels at his presence, and Lucius can sense just how tired he is. Lastly, with his sister Carla, we see a glimpse of the person he was before he became the killer, a kind older brother to her. Corel buried his emotions to become a killing machine, and we see the consequences of that. Harkin is struck with guilt for the death of Lord Elbert. He walks around almost with a death wish because of his survivor's guilt. Before coming in service of Foray, he's already ousted by the last lord he was serving. After surviving Nurgle's assault on Elbert's knights, he infiltrated the Black Fang, vowing revenge, killing members from within when he could have returned to Isadora, who missed him dearly. Whereas Corel buries his emotions, Harkin's grief guides his actions. Nino's family was killed and she was taken in by Sonia for her magical potential, whereas Zafar was found by Nurgle, already a killer as a child and trained into a weapon by Nurgle. Both of them meet upon Nurgle and Sonia's entry into the Black Fang. Nino, who believes Sonia was her mother, sought desperately to get an ounce of her love, but was only abused by her, where Zafar became emotionless for all the killing he did for Nurgle, getting the epithet Angel of Death. In their time in the Black Fang, Nino forms a found family with her stepbrothers Lord and Linus, along with Legault and other members. There she finally has a group of people that legitimately care about her for the first time. After Jafar gets injured on a mission and his wounds are being taken care of by Nino, we see the spark of the beginning of their connection that remains throughout the rest of the game. Nino is very open with her emotions despite being severely abused by her mother, refusing to kill Zephiel on a mission who she deeply empathizes with. Her kindness is also what saves Jafar and allows him to learn how to love, because she treats him like a person as opposed to a killer or a weapon. The love they have for each other, whether it's as best friends or lovers, allows them to overcome the abuse and trauma of their upbringing. Carla the Swordswoman is incredibly aloof and awkward when talking to people. When it comes to how she grew up, she wasn't allowed to touch a sword because of her family's culture. But when she did, it became a source of pride for her. But because of her brother killing the rest of her family for strength, even threatening to kill her, it forever damaged their relationship, when all she wants is for things to go back to the way they were with him. Her love for fighting comes into fruition when she falls in love with Bartre, who respects her as a warrior, the very thing her family denied her from being. There, she gets to form her own family, getting back what she lost. Veda joins Eliwood and Hector out of a feeling of being indebted towards them for saving Zephiel from his assassination. It's important to note that though she may be incredibly insane, she was Heath's commander, who had led her division to save the innocent people of Bern, only to be betrayed by her country. They all died except for Heath. and she stayed behind to buy them time, getting brutal scars in the process. Behind her cruel everything is an absolute devotion to Prince Zephyr, and someone who was a caring person for the innocent lives, but ultimately was punished for it, causing her to lose her squadron, despite her willingness to sacrifice herself for them to live, which is in a way, the ultimate form of love. It also helps us understand why Heath is loyal to her and is so willing to die alongside her. Ronald is a very important character I need to go more in depth about because of how integral he is to the themes of the game and some of the background lore going around in Fire Emblem 7. But because he's so elusive and only appears near the end of the game where the player can easily miss him in his supports, he's a character that can be really hard to spot. When we meet the Bishop Ronald, although he appears to be a biased believer of Elamine, we learn that he has a storied history. Ronald was once a mercenary in Kaelin, where he had met a young Rawless. At some point in time, he'd lost a close friend of his, which affected him greatly. The loss was so great that when Ronald came to encounter Nurgle, he agreed to be as part of an experiment to find a way to revive his lost friend. Doing so, he committed several acts he would later come to regret, including murdering Lucius's father, which led the boy to become an orphan. Soon, Nurgle did create a morph out of what was left of his dead friend, and it just became a husk, which is now known as the Magic Seal. Ronald was disgusted and lashed out with Nurgle, and they parted ways. And now, he's a convert to Saint Elamine, likely to find inner peace for his long life of regrets, but he still harbors their strong hatred for Nurgle. The line between Ronald being an almost guiding figure to several characters, but also a person with several regrets, makes him very compelling, with his two most important supports being his Isidora support and his Lucius support. With Isidora, she confesses the sorrow she feels for the lives she's taken as a knight. Your Excellency, am I wrong for feeling this way? What should I do? Forgive me if I am a fraud, but I can offer you no solace. The guilt Ronald feels over his past makes him unable to help Isidora. He cannot give her inner peace when he himself doesn't have it, but he can give her an answer. Forgiving your sins is a small task for a bishop, and if that were enough to save you, I would recite the words, but you suffer, and you seek answers. And that is the greatest pain of all, the pain of doubt. If I dispel this doubt, I could free you from your pain, but then you should be nothing more than a puppet that kills. Use your doubt. Use it to become something more. It makes you human. Whether you will ever find answers, I do not know, but you must live with your doubt until then. If you can, then all the joy and sorrow you experience will truly belong to you. Ronald gives the best answer he possibly could to Isidora's internal conflict. The fact that she's experienced those emotions is what makes her alive, but she has to be able to sit with them. Her love, grief, joy, sorrow are all valid emotions that make her alive, and it's okay to express those. Being able to express them now to Ronald is already setting her down a path to potentially find the answers she's seeking. However, Ronald doesn't believe there are any answers for him. Even if he defeats Nurgle and confronts his past, it's hard to say if he does find the inner peace he's looking for. Though there's something special if we look at Ronald's ace support with Lucius, after finding out he killed his father, which led Lucius to live a life of suffering. Ronald is in disbelief when Lucius instantly forgives him. Forgive me, son. In those days, I only thought of myself. I trespassed against many in my singular drive to gain the friend I lost. Forgive me. Please, forgive me. I forgive you. You cannot know the evil I wrought. I did it. I killed your father. Even so, I feel your grief, and it feels like my own. There's something to be said about Ronald. Watching one of the victims of his many great sins be so quick to forgive him because he can empathize with his grief. It's probably one of the most powerful moments in the game, buried behind an obscure character and a hard support to get. This could be the very thing Ronald needs to finally be at inner peace with himself, but it could also not be enough, because he may never forgive himself. But at the very least, he is able to share those emotions with another character. When I look back at the scene of Lynn and Hector on the boat, I think about the message I ultimately took from this game. That it's okay to cry and it's okay to feel. Your emotions are things you should be sharing with other people, because that's how you build a connection, and in some characters' cases, that's how you build a family. Being alone, bottling up your emotions, or trying to avoid them isn't really helpful to you or anyone at all. But when you share your emotions and when you make connections, there's power in that. For most characters, it's the power to be able to navigate through the emotions that come from a loss, and learning how to love again and open your heart to new people. That's why most characters are fighting for or looking for a place where they belong, because when they find that place, that found family, and it could even simply be one person they have a connection with, it's where they can express their joy, their sorrow, their love, and their grief. In other words, everyone is striving to find Arcadia, a distant utopia. Fire Emblem 7 is a very dense game, with incredible characters in spite of its weak plot, and I hope that it left you thinking about the game differently. This is the most difficult video I made, so please, I would appreciate it if you liked the video or commented on what you thought. Have a nice day and subscribe for more FEF.